Shalom, Jacob from Ahava Echad. Let's continue now to really understand just the tragedy of what it means to translate God's Torah into another language, and therefore the need for all people to come back to the original, which is so beautiful, so simple, so deep, so amazing. These are these symbols. This is the poster that you could download on our site, avacha.org/the real Aleph-Bet. Okay, and so we're in the middle of Masechet the tractate of scribes, as mentioned in the previous video and credited there. And the seventh halacha, halacha zayin, maaseh behamisha zekenim. There was a case with 5 of these brilliant luminary sages. Zekenim is an allusion to the wisest, most brilliant sages, because it's zayin kanim. 7 kanim as branches in plural. Literally the 7 branches of the menorah. The real sages, as Rabbi Joel David Bakst teaches, is the full confluence of, as in the name of the Vilna Gaon, is the full confluence of all the Torah wisdom and all of the science and the physical wisdoms on earth. Science is one of them. Music is another. There's the list that you could see in Rabbi Joel David Bakst in the Reb's books, The Secret Doctrine of the Vilna Gaon, and the latest book, which you can get, that discusses the current events a little bit there. It's an amazing thing. So these 5 luminary sages were asked to, or wrote for Talmai. They were asked to write for Talmai, which is translated as Ptolemy or something like that by Art Scroll. I don't know how to even pronounce it, but this is from what I understand, this is the king who made the library in Alexandria to make all the wisdom. He wanted to understand all the wisdom. In the Sefer HaYashar introduction, the Book of the Straight, or the Straight Book over there, it writes that what happened in this situation, a little bit more in depth, which was interesting, credit to Isaac, but he basically saying here that Talmai wanted the Torah in Greek. So he gathered these 5 brilliant sages, right? And he made them translate it. And it was V'haya hayom kasher liYisrael keyom shena'asa ha'egel. And it was as difficult a day for Israel, for the nation of Israel, as the day, and all truth seekers and all the good people of the world, as the day that the egel was made, the day of the golden calf, as said. The sages are transmitting equating, in the name of the Rabbi Moshe Shapiro Zatzal, equating the translation of the Torah into Greek, that the Heta Egel caused the entire Torah to go down an entire level. That initial, the Luchot, which is also interesting to learn, such a common pop culture mistake, is that they have these thin slabs that are rounded off at the top, and these are called the tablets, literally. And this is like made of stone and chiseled and thin, and again, as we mentioned. But really, the original Luchot was a sapphire cube, as Rav Moshe Shapiro Zatzal says. It explains, and everyone could read it from any direction, and also it apparently captured the reverberating sounds of God speaking at Sinai, was captured within this sapphire, and it was rotating and moving around and everything. It's discussed in the Targum and Midrashim. It's an amazing thing. Basically, looking at this was alien in every regard. It was, according to the Midrash. Right now, you have, in this kind of initial video, it's like you take my word for it, but we're getting into the basic sources. But just to mention in passing, this is from the throne, the Kiseh HaKavod, whatever this means, God's heavenly throne, made of sapphire. And this sapphire cube is that what Moshe descended down the mountain. And it was a miracle because it weighed 40 se'ah, which is, whatever, for our purposes right now, 40 gallons of water, which is, a human being lifting that is a miracle in itself, whatever. Not world's strongest man, possibly. But it's, whatever that measurement is, but lifting that wasn't a miracle. Where it came from was like a miracle. Just, it was an open proof of God to the entire world. Not only that, but the sound was captured, and you could see the sound waves or the sound reverberating within the sapphire. And any question then you ask Hashem would be answered, or the symbols or the reverberations. I don't know how it works exactly, obviously, unfortunately, because we lost this entire gift. But this is what Moshe Shapiro Zatzal is explaining in the Midrash. So we lost this beautiful, the alien answer, the answers to all the questions on earth was shattered into billions of pieces because of the sins of the Egel, and the Torah went down an entire level. So the sages are saying, when the Torah was translated into Greek for the first time, it went down an entire level again, just like it went down by the Egel. And as we mentioned, because leaving God's symbols, and we're no longer seeing pictures, we now have summer homework. We now have texts to read and just books to read, as opposed to these symbols and divine wisdom to experience. It's a completely different thing. It's a completely different thing in the same amount of space, on the same page. It just changes everything when you change the font to how it was given. All verses need to appear in T.M.E.S.F.E.B. Not only that, but obviously we'd go a step further and with the Targum, the meaning of the verse. Okay? And why is it so bad? Shelo hayta haTorah yechola lehitargem kol tzorka, because the Torah in her entirety, all of the nuances that's seen in the physical, in the written, the scribed copy Torah, is really the spoken Torah. The spoken Torah dictates how the shape of every symbol should look like, and all the rules of the spacing, and all the special crowns, and all the special features. That's the spoken Torah guiding the scribe. You have to make these crowns here, you have to do this here. And the spoken Torah is why we have a written Torah. Again, she precedes him. In this regard, the spoken Torah is seen as the feminine, and the scribed Torah is seen as the masculine, because simply that men are more visual. This is a general rule. Just men are more visual, why we see advertising and whatever the way that it is, and then women are more with the hearing, and the ability to hear something is a womanly trait. This ability to be able to build and extract information and connect information, and just in the creation of a baby, which is called a miniature universe, all of that is the power of the woman. And so these are the two Torahs, feminine and masculine, and they're linked up with the order of the day. First is night, and then is day. First, it begins in darkness and chaos and craziness, but the real day is coming. You see, it's so backwards in the world. They make the day that's where the start is. In the middle of the day, like really when the sun comes out, that's the beginning of the day, and it all ends in darkness. And it's mentally and subconsciously all these effects of what this does, God forbid. But we know, when we look for 3 stars in the sky, that's the beginning of a fresh day. It's a new set of 24 hours that begin at night. Every night is a new set of 24 hours where it renews. And nighttime sometimes you get that extra burst of energy all of a sudden at night. Where is this coming from? It's because that's really when the day renews. It begins like that. Okay? And so the spoken Torah is at night, as Rabbi Ari Khan via the Vilna Gaon is explaining, that the pillars of fire were at night that escorted the entire nation out of Egypt. The pillars of fire are at night to illuminate the darkness, and then during the day it's the pillars of cloud, which is water, which is the masculine Torah that flowed down from the highest heavens down to earth, down onto the parchment itself, that you could see the symbols, you could see the words that are given to us to understand, and then transmitted the entire Torah Sheba'al Peh to understand every single nuance and detail of what we're even looking at. We can't even read a single word without the vowels, without the spoken Torah, without the transmission of how to even read it, how to pronounce it, and what does it mean even. It's crazy. So that's the whole spoken Torah is gigantic and infinite compared to the scribed written Torah, which has to be finite so that you can contain it within a single book. Okay, so that the Torah, because all the nuances of the entire spoken Torah that's captured in the scribed written Torah and alluded to in the written Torah was completely lost in translation. You don't have any of the Aleph Bet whatsoever in Ivri and in even K'tava-Shurit. You see, the bolded big symbols is the Torah symbols, and under it is the ancient Ivri script. Again, Abraham is 600 years before the Phoenicians. So people saying that Greek is from the Phoenicians. Okay, where'd the Phoenicians get it from? Trace it back to the roots, the craziest conspiracy to cut people off from the real source of all information, the real source of all languages on earth, which is the most uniting thing. It's again the Aleph-Bet, the symbols that all humanity knew, the symbols that make up reality in our bodies, and we see them in nature, in the trees, and the etz, and the roots, and the shoresh, and everything. Shoresh, sores, source, all languages start to blend. Rabbi Zamir Cohen via Rabbi Isaac Mosenson Shlita, Rabbi Tovia Singer Shlita. And so, coming back to the basics and then building with the most solid foundation that nobody will ever shake you and scare you ever once you have the real lessons of the Aleph-Bet and learn the whole end, the Atbash, where, as we mentioned, Hashem says 3 times to hell itself, you have no part in Yisrael and in people, good people who walk in the ways of Yisrael. And so it's a very, very beautiful thing. And, I don't give spoilers, but essentially it's just too good. Not that phrase, it's just too good to be true. It's just too good. And it is true, because that's really what it is. And we'll see more examples of that. And that was Halacha Zayin, the 7th Halacha, just explaining how the entire Torah went down an entire level, leaving Hashem's divine Aleph-Bet, beautiful symbols and pictures for the visual kids, to then man-made scribbles and text, which is really plagiarized T.M.E.S.F.E.B, and we're going to make a separate source on that, where the Greek script and the English script and Russian script, Cyrillic scripts, where they come from, in Spanish and German, and because they all use the same Cyrillic, I think is the title, the general title for all these scripts. And so we'll see the source of that, which is again this Hebrew T.M.E.S.F.E.B script, which is, if we can sum up very quick, is that the Torah symbols are the symbols of the heavens, like they have infinite depth. And then the T.M.E.S.F.E.B symbols are the symbols of earth. They're all things that you could point to in this physical world. Obviously, Ketava Shuri too, but there's so much depth to it, and it depicts spiritual or abstract concepts, as opposed to T.M.E.S.F.E.B, which is very specific physical things that you could point to. There could be a crazy depth in there too, and all of that should be explored. So thank you so much for watching, and we'll get into the next halacha and the real Septuagint. How to tell what is the real Septuagint and what would the real Septuagint contain. Thank you so much for watching. Comments, questions, let us know. All the best.